Guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Trev from Trevessence. I was just reading the book and fortunately or unfortunately, I'm going to call it fortunately. Um, I'm going to call it both. I had to run. I was getting a phone call that I definitely had to take. And I wasn't sure how long it was going to last, so I didn't want to keep the live running silently. So I had turned it off, but I wasn't through reading for today. So here I am. I am back again. We are going to continue the reading. We are going to continue the reading of the book Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. We are on to we are reading chapter 6. And we were just in the heat of the moment where and Isabel and Michael are sort of falling in love with each other. There's a lot going on between the two of them. So here we go again. Let's see where we stop. I'm going to just start reading from the last paragraph where we left off. He leaned down and whispered into her ear, "Later, baby, I'll tell you what I want later." It wasn't what he had said, but how he had said it that gave her the goosebumps. Time for her to stop flirting with him before she got into trouble. As satisfying and as fun as the playful banter was, she had a feeling he was a pro at this sort of thing. She didn't want to get into a competition with him, knowing full well he would make mincemeat of her. Fun time was over. Once they were in the car and on their way to the station, he said, "I should call Dylan. He could meet us." "No, absolutely not." Her voice was emphatic. "He's on vacation, and I don't want to bother him. I'll see him soon enough. Besides, I only need an attorney with me. I and I've got one of those." He glanced over at her. "What's going on? Why haven't you talked to Kate? And Dylan could be of big help. There's more to this than what you want me to believe, isn't there?" She shook her head. She didn't tell him the truth, that she didn't want her sister and brother-in-law to think she had lost track of where she was because she was being distracted. She had, but she didn't want them to know it. "Why haven't you called them?" he asked again. The man was relentless. No wonder he became an attorney. Arguing to get his way seemed to be second nature to him. "You are a nag." He wasn't giving up. "Why?" "Because you'll know I zoned out." "You what?" "Zoned out," she repeated. He looked puzzled by her confession. "How did you zone out?" "I got distracted." I do that sometimes," she said hesitantly. "I write songs in my head. I thread a thread of a lyric or a phrase comes to me, and I have to finish it before I can think about anything else. I'm kind of obsessive, compulsive, I told you." "You write songs and you sing, don't you? You song You sang a song at Dylan and Kate's wedding, didn't you? I remember you didn't want to, but your sister got you to change your mind." "Oh, yes, I remember." "Okay, so you got distracted. Nothing wrong with that." "I walked for over 2 hours, maybe closer to two than not." "I don't know. I didn't look at any street signs. I got lost because I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings. I turned around and started back." Michael pictured her naively wandering around the city, and every muscle of his body tightened. But she had an idea that would have happened to her. He got mad thinking about it. Isabel could see his jaw clenching. When he looked at her, she swore those were sparks in his eyes. "I'm actually very aware of my surroundings," she said, trying to placate him. "And I don't take chances." "But you got distracted." He made it sound like she had committed a grave sin. "Yes, so what?" "Well, you're damn lucky." Yes, I am. A minute passed in silence, and then he said, and you saved a man's life. But you also took one. Oh my God, he's just rubbing it in. Maybe I did. He's critical. How do you know that? Detective Samuel. He arranged for me to be put on the list so nurses in ICU can talk to me and give me updates. How many times have you called to check on his progress? Just 3 times. Before he could tell her she was a neurotic mess, Isabel quickly moved to another topic. What's our strategy going to be with what's our strategy going to be with the detective? Strategy? He said, trying to hide his smile. She sounded so earnest. Samuel will ask questions and you'll answer them. What if he wants me to come in so he can arrest me? On what charge? Murder? Glancing over to her and seeing the genuine worry on her face, he softened his tone. Are you seriously thinking you could be charged with murder? Well, I killed a man, she reminded. The man was trying to kill you, and the man you were trying to help. Yes, that's right. Be sure to mention that if Detective Samuel brings out the handcuffs. The mere possibility gave Isabel the shivers. That's not going to happen, Michael assured her, but he could tell she didn't believe him. Isabel wanted to be calm and in control when she sat down with Samuel. She wasn't sure how she was going to accomplish that goal, though. Right now, her mind was a riot of emotions and crazy thoughts, all because of Michael. She had enough to think about. She didn't need to have Michael on her mind as well. He was simply doing a favor for her brother. Otherwise, he wouldn't give her a time of day. As impossible as it seemed, she had to stop fantasizing about what it would be like to be with him. He was, as the saying goes, way out of her league. Michael was so much more sophisticated, far more worldly. The woman he liked, the women he liked were probably worldly too, and didn't have any expectations of a future with him, wanting pleasure for one night or maybe a week, and then moving on without any deep emotional connection. Isabel knew she couldn't handle a relationship like that. She needed the emotional commitment. Did it make her a fool that she wanted to be in love with a man that before she slept with him? In this day and age, it probably did, but she didn't care. Her dear friend Lexi felt the same way. They had talked about it at length one night and decided they were dinosaurs. God help the woman who would want to marry Michael and settle down. She would have a uphill battle in front of her. Now that she had sorted it all out and had come to the conclusion that for self-preservation, she should get as far away from Michael as possible. She could move on to more important matters. Then she turned to take a long look at him. He was driving, so he wouldn't notice that she was staring. What was so great about him anyway? Sure, he was tall and he was very fit. And no question, he was handsome in a rugged sort of way. He obviously was very intelligent and had done some heroic things in serving his country. And even though her original opinion of him had not been favorable, she had to acknowledge he could be thoughtful at times. He didn't have to stay with her or help her through this disaster, but he hadn't hesitated. Okay, so what? Lots of men were handsome and smart and thoughtful. That didn't mean she would have to have sex with all of them. Michael got roped into this situation. She reminded herself he wasn't anything special. He had plenty of flaws. She had seen them firsthand. She was simply getting carried away by his circumstances. And once she parted ways with him, she would be rational again. Her sigh at finally figuring all of this out must have been audible because Michael turned, his eyes sought hers, and his mouth curled into a smile. Her heart began to race. Oh, yes, she definitely needed to get away from him. When she was around him, she couldn't think straight. She had important decisions to make, and she couldn't afford to have anything or anyone interfere with them. I'm going to Scotland, she blurted. She couldn't get much further away than that. Now, could she? When are you going? I'm spending a week in Boston. Then Kate and I leave next Monday. But my plans could change because of my shooting. The detectives might keep me here. The fear of being detained by the police resurfaced, and she quickly shook it off. But I'll go soon, she insisted. I have land there. Where? In the Highlands. Where exactly in the Highlands? I don't know. She was about to explain that, yes, she knew where Glen McKenna was, but she couldn't give him an exact location unless she had a map in front of her. The look of disbelief on his face changed her mind. He seemed so astounded that she could be that clueless. She decided to have a little fun. You don't know where your land is? He asked. She had to bite her lower lip to keep from laughing. That's right, I don't know. They had arrived at the station. Michael parked and walked around the car to open her door. He took her hand to help her out and didn't seem inclined to let go. So you're just going to wander around until you find it? With a shrug and a smile, she said, well, that's the plan. Samuel met them at the top of the stairs and led them into yet another interview room. Same color, same depressing atmosphere. She straightened her back and sat down, folding her arms in her lap to create the impression that she was completely relaxed. She asked, Detective Samuel, the man that I helped, do you know how he is doing? Yes, he answered. His name is Craig Walsh. He's a detective out of Miami. Craig Walsh, another Walsh. Remember we read we read that story about John Walsh. He's a detective out of Miami. He had an impressive record. What was he doing in Boston? Michael asked the question. We don't have that information yet. We are working on it. Michael nodded. He could tell that Samuel was being evasive, but he didn't push him. He could get all the information they had from his brother Nick or Alec, who were both FBI agents, or from Dylan, who knew just about every detective in Boston. Isabel wanted to get this behind her. What questions do you have for me today, detective? He cleared his throat. I thought we could watch the video and go over the sequence of events again. I'm hoping you'll remember something more. I'll be happy to go over the sequence of events, but I'm not ready to look at the video. You still haven't watched it? Samuel asked. His surprise was evident. I can't tell you the number of times I've watched it. Why haven't you? I don't want to. I think you should, Samuel said. Seeing it might trigger something. Isabel looked at Michael, who said she'll watch it when she's ready. Samuel agreed reluctantly. All right, let's get started. No matter what, Isabel was going to remain patient. She told herself, and she would go over the event as many times as Samuel wanted. Cool and calm. That was the objective. Michael pulled out one of the metal chairs and sat down next to her, draping one arm across the back of her chair. Isabel took a second to settle her nerves and then proceeded to describe in detail what had happened from the time she stepped outside of the hotel to go for a walk until the moment the police showed up. Samuel took notes, and as soon as she was finished, he began asking the same tired old questions again and again. I know we've been at it a while, but would you mind going over it one more time? He asked. Would he mind if she started screaming? Probably, she thought. Happy to. She lied, and once again she went through what Samuel was now calling the event. She thought that was an odd name for what had happened, but then Michael called it her bad experience, which she thought was odd as well. She had her own special name for what happened. Nightmare. A freaking nightmare. Isabel, Michael said, focus on the task at hand. Samuel asked you a question. She had zoned out. I'm sorry. What were you wanting to know again? More questions followed. They were a bit different from the ones asked several times yesterday. Samuel was more interested in knowing what the injured detective had said to her. She thought she had gone over it yesterday. Maybe he forgot. Samuel studied his notes for a few seconds, then said, now, Isabel, when Detective Walt was reaching for you, he was whispering something, wasn't he? She tried to remember. He was mumbling, I think. I don't know if he was whispering something. I didn't hear it clearly. There was blood everywhere, and I was thinking that he must be in terrible pain and I needed to help him. I doubt he was making sense. He nodded. Our technicians are examining the video. They'll slow it down and try to determine what Detective Walt was saying. He put his notepad on the table and leaned back in his chair. I think most people would have tried to run away, but you wanted to help. She couldn't let him believe she had done anything heroic. It's all happened so fast, and I couldn't have gotten away even if I wanted to. He had a fierce grip on me. I do believe most people would want to help. I think you might be a bit cynical. Michael began to stroke her upper arm. It felt nice. And you might be a bit naive, he said. I've been at this job a long time, Samuel said. I've seen the worst in people. Nodding to Michael, he added, I'm sure you have seen things you won't ever forget. You were in Afghanistan, weren't you? Michael nodded, but he didn't want to talk about past experiences. Or so he said. Now, how is Detective Walsh doing? Any change in his condition? No, he's still listed in critical condition, Samuel answered. He may never wake up. What about the man I shot? Isabel asked. You told me that as soon as you knew anything about him, you'd tell me. I'd like you to know who he was. As soon as I know something, I'll share it with you. She had a strong feeling he wasn't telling her the truth, and she couldn't understand why he would lie to her. Why wouldn't he give her the man's name? Or at the very least, Michael could see how dejected she looked. Are you finished here? He asked. Before they could leave, Samuel once again wanted to know where Isabel would be in case he needed to talk to her again. How many times was he going to make her come back to the station to ask her the same boring questions? Did he think she was holding something back? The poor injured man had whispered something to her, but she hadn't understood what he was saying. What more could she add to the investigation? She had told them everything she could remember. When they were finally allowed to leave the station, Isabel voiced her concern. Michael, why don't Detective Samuel tell me anything about the man I shot? He's gathering facts, so give him some time. Isabel didn't want to go to Nathan's Bay. She wasn't in the mood to be chatty today. Would you mind dropping me off at the hotel? I think I'll hang out in my room. I'm tired, and I won't be much fun to be around today. I might go up to the spa, she added. Hello, LCD, how are you doing, my love? He shook his head. You are going with me. I need to decompress, she insisted. You can decompress at the house. Everyone's waiting for you. He remembered Dylan had commented that Isabel liked to drive, and he thought that might cheer her up. When they reached the car, he handed her the keys. You want me to drive? She sounded thrilled. Yeah, sure. Those were the last coherent words Michael spoke until they were parked in the drive on the side of his parents' home. Most of the words he shouted didn't make sense. The rest were obscenities. He wasn't a screamer, but she had pushed him to his limit. 5 or 6 times on the endless drive, he thought they were going to die. The last time he might have whispered, he might have welcomed a quick death. Remember, in the previous chapters, Isabel had said that she drove like a maniac, but she never got in an accident or gotten a ticket. But when she was driving, she was a beast. He lost count of the many near misses. Crossing the bridge, he was sure they were going to fly off into the ocean. He grabbed the wheel and got them back into the right lane before the car was launched over the rail. And did she appreciate him saving their asses? Hell no. She slapped his hand away and yelled, "I've got this!" When, in his opinion, she clearly didn't. By the time he got out of the car, he was shaken. He had been in plenty of firefights, surprise attacks, and every other kind of gunfight while in Afghanistan, and he had never been unnerved. But then he had been working with competent men and women who knew what they were doing. Isabel, on the other hand, was a maniac behind the wheel. Dylan and Kate were sitting at the kitchen table, reading a report on Dylan's laptop when Michael stormed in, slammed the door shut behind him, and roared, "Son of a bitch!" Kate jumped and grabbed hold of her husband's arm. Dylan didn't flinch. He took it all in strides because he knew exactly what had happened. Michael's face was bright red, and there was murder in his eyes. Dylan calmly looked up from his laptop and with a grin said, "You let her drive you, didn't you?" OMG, he did. He allowed Isabel to drive, and he is now regretting it. Guys, that was the end of chapter 6 in the book on Grace Under Fire. That's going to be the end of the reading for today, my friends. When we come back tomorrow, we will read, we will continue. Excuse me. When we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading of Grace Under Fire by the lovely Julie Garwood. We will be on to chapter 7. That's going to be it. I'm joking. That's going to be it from me for today, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Thanks to everyone for coming. Thank you so much, LCD. Join me again tomorrow as I read the book Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. Have yourselves a great day, everybody.